We are very protective of our intellectual heroes. We're celebrating the 100th birthday of Marshall McLuhan this year.
Yes, I remember.
You've said that Marshall McLuhan was not a philosopher, that he was more a communicator, and that if he were alive today, he would be writing essays rejecting the earlier assertions he made years ago.
Certainly, because
Certainly?
He was.
The man is an icon. I mean,
he said that the Gutenberg galaxy was declining, and there was the new visual global language, and internet is the return of the Gutenberg galaxy. I think that McLuhan, if he had the chance to survive and to see internet, would have at least partly changed. Then he could interpret the internet as a new form of the global village and so on and so forth. But certainly he must admit that the internet people is first of all obliged to read and not to live the visual hallucination of a discotheque. Now, the model of the global village for McLuhan was the psychedelic discotheque. Internet is different. It can be equally psychedelic, but in a different way.
you have to read it. You can't.
You have to read. It's a different relationship. The problem of internet is that you can read. You have to read. You read, but you don't know whether the one who speaks tell the truth or not, because you don't know whether the site is reliable or not. That's another story. It's another story.
In your work, you said that you're fascinated, and that's your word, by error, by bad faith, and by idiocy.
Stupidity, yes.
Why are you fascinated by those three?
Because the normal intelligence is boring. 2 + 2 makes 4. Finished. You have no possibilities. Stupidity is infinite. 2 + 2 can make billions of different numbers.
Right.
Stupidity
So as an artist,
always amazes us. We never believed that stupidity could reach that peak.
So as a writer, then a novelist, it's more fertile ground, is it, than rationality and intelligence?
Yes, but remember that once again, there was somebody else that devoted an entire book to stupidity. That was Flaubert with Bouvard et Pécuchet. Okay, right. One of my texts, obviously.
How do you pick the subjects that you want to write about? Is it something that you're interested in, or you're not sure what you want to do until you start doing it, or how do you decide?
There is an Indian proverb saying, "Sit on the bench of the river, and the corpse of your enemy will pass through." And the novel is the same thing. You start from, let's say, from an image for a problem, and then it goes by itself. It comes by itself. If you put on the river, like a beaver, some barrages, maybe the corpse of the enemy can arrive before or later. And I used to put in my stories always useless constrictions.
Useless constrictions?
Yes. Art is made by constrictions. Rhyme is a constriction. Rhythm,
it's a manufacture. You create it. You make it.
You have to obey rules. Art is not, as the stupid thing, the kingdom of freedom. No, it's the kingdom of respect of many rules. I give you an example of a useless constriction. I wanted to start my novel Baudolino during the siege of Constantinople. Why? Because I had never visited Constantinople, and I wanted to go there, and I need, since I am not a tourist, I wanted to have a serious alibi to go there.
Right, a reason.
The reason, I had a book to write, I go to Constantinople. And then,
they call it Istanbul.
And then provoked me incredible inconvenience. because the siege of Constantinople is 1204, yes, 1204, and Baudolino is born at the middle of the previous century, and for many reasons is incredible why he on the track, on the exploration in order to reach the land of Prester John, and the letter is produced at the mid of the 11th century, the 12th century, why he arrived so late in Constantinople. There was no reason. I didn't know what to do.
How did you resolve it? What did you do?
I made Baudolino to wait, and I created the spasm of the desire.
Spasm of desire?
The spasm of the desire of Baudolino and of the reader.
Right.
Yearning to arrive, and there was always some accident that stopped him. That was the book. All the rest... The fact that I decided that in the cemetery Simonini had to visit the hospital of Dr. Charcot. Why? I liked it. I wanted to know something more about Charcot. And since I was writing a book on the 19th century, it was the good
hypnotism
good occasion to do it. Since they were the years in which Sigmund Freud was passing there, so he met Sigmund Freud and then made my novel to work in a certain direction. So I think that, well, I'm obviously joking a little, but the author is like a spectator who sits down and waits how the novel goes on, giving only little
tweaks. So you enjoy writing and having written. Is there anything frustrating about it, or are you working all the time?
But no, I'm working all the time, obviously, because in order to make the novel to go on, you have to produce the flow. I mean, if you produce automatic writing, the writing can be automatic, but it's a writing.
Umberto Eco, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. We have a microphone here in the center aisle. If you have any questions,
come here.
And come down, yes.
Don't ask about Berlusconi.
No. I already made that mistake, so don't ask about Berlusconi. Yes, sir.
With your love of the fake and the artificial story, I'm wondering if you've traveled to the Museum of Jurassic Technology in California.
The San Francisco one?
Culver City. So yeah, down around there. It's an artist who's created a fake natural history museum.
No, I know what you're mentioning. No, at that time I didn't visit it. Okay.
Did you like Disneyland? Would you find it?
Yes, I like Disneyland. I prefer the Californian one than the Orlando.
Do you?
One. So
did you go on any?
Because there is a difference. There is a difference. In the same way in which there are water tasters in the world. This is a good water, better than the Fiji.
It's a good year, is it?
Better than the Fiji one. So there are Disneyland experts saying that's better. The French Disney, no. So.
Did you go on any of the rides? On Thunder Mountain or anything? In the rides in Disney World? Or?
Oh yes. But I loved particularly the Enchanted Mansion, the Ghost,
yeah,
and the Pirates.
The Pirates. Pirates of the Caribbean. Yes, sir.
You talked about the potential perversity of the reader. It's been a while since I read Opera Aperta, but could you say something about whether there is a definable margin between acceptable and unacceptable perversity and how one would determine that?
Yes, I was certainly among the first to insist on the participation, collaboration of the reader in in the life of the work of art. I use reader as a metonymy because it's also the viewer, or the listener, and so on and so forth. But the title of my book was The Open Work. It was the openness of a work. So I couldn't follow then the heresy of deconstruction, who was an American merchandise produced on French license, in which you reach certain points in which, like many others say, you are absolutely free to read the text as you want. No, you can be free to read the text in many ways, but there are moments in which the text says, no, I am not saying that. It's enough to think, to make a paradoxical example, but certainly Finnegan's Wake doesn't tell the story of a stagecoach that is pursued by the Indians of Geronimo. Okay, so you see, there is a moment in which the text says, no, I am not speaking of that. I am not speaking of that. So we can distinguish between act of freedom in interpreting a text and acts of stupidity. You can...
Yes, sir.
Because a text controls itself. There was a great discussion about Finnegan's Wake. There are communities of devotees of Finnegan's Wake, the Talibans of Finnegan's Wake. And once they found in a place Beria, they said he was alluding to the communist Beria, the one who was then fired by Stalin. And just another interval, yes, because in another, in the previous page, he quotes the Anschluss, so it's the same period. The answer of another reader, but that page of Finnegan's Wake was written in 29, and we have the text on transition, why Beria became notorious in 32, so Joyce couldn't have, and they continued the long battle until a certain moment, another reader found in 10 pages later a biblical quotation on Joseph and his brothers, and one of the brothers of Joseph was Beria. And so the text controlled its own reading. The two Berias were belonging to the same biblical environment and not to the Soviet environment.
The conspiratorial view of literature. Yes, sir.
Hi, I heard you lecture at University of Toronto, I think it was about 10 years ago, and part of your lecture that stood in my mind was when you said that you didn't feel that people would ever choose to read books in a digital format, that people would use the new technology to produce books that were personally customized, but that no one would subject themselves to that. Now, I know you've written on this quite recently, but I'm just wondering if you'd like to talk a bit about how your feelings have changed, your thoughts have changed on
I
this.
changed in part my views because the last month I had to travel for 20 days and I brought with me 10 books to read, and then were 10 kilograms more on my baggage and I had some problems in my arm. And in coming here, I picked up 30 books on iPad. And provided there are books to read before sleeping, I read them on iPad pretty well. I've missed something, your point, because you said that to personalize, but the only way to personalize a book is to read a paper book, underlying it, making signs, leaving traces of your reading. That is the real personal.
I think you were suggesting that people would print books in different sizes and formats and
yes, but suppose you find in your cellars the books you read at the age of 10. the paper book, it contains all the memory of your reading, even the scribble you made. Suppose, on the contrary, to find there the USB containing the same text.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
7 years ago, I read The Name of the Rose in my last year of my undergrad, and it was one of the books that inspired me to do my PhD in religion. And as I'm waiting to defend my PhD, I still don't know whether or not to thank you for that.
It's not a question.
No.
But my actual question
is something very, very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. If you wrote Foucault's Pendulum today, with the internet and social networking being what it is, do you think it would have changed at all?
Foucault's pendulum,
Yeah,
given everything digitally, and would have changed, do you think?
No,
If
no.
you wrote it today.
No. I recently decided to make new revised editions of my novels, but revised means that there was a mistake, or I correct an adjective, and I reread recently the Foucault's Pendulum. There is a certain point, useless list of events. It was easier to transform it into a dialogue, but no more. No, it will not change in the light.
Yes, sir.
In your writing, there's a clear interest in popular culture. For example, in Travels in Hyperreality, you have an essay on Superman. Your founder McLuhan, who wrote again about Superman in The Mechanical Bride. Who are the writers, the critics of popular culture right now whose work you think is of a high quality that you'd really recommend?
Critics of popular culture.
Yes, now. Yeah, I had always a principle in my life. After your 50s, you must be concerned only with Elizabethan poets. No, that's I'm sorry. I don't care of Elizabethan poets, but really,
but after
my 50s, I left the new experience to my students, to my young friends and researchers, and I less and less interested in the problems of popular culture, even though, because I knew everything about comic books, the new ones are too difficult for me. I prefer
Why is that? Why?
Have you read the new Batman? It's easier to read Joyce. It's easier to read Ezra Pound. And maybe the fault was ours. We said, they are to improve, to become better, but better doesn't mean complicated. Better means Charlie Brown, the great. But now they are extremely complicated, so the only avant-garde now is performed in popular culture. And so I am uninterested in. But I have all a crowd of young friends who are doing a lot of work. I would be unable to make a new name. Chi posso citare? Not even the young ones, no?
Popular culture.
Chi c'è? The new
comic books, right?
No, but Louis has a new critic of the popular culture, something who writes something new. In Italy can be Abruzzese. Let me think about it.
He'll get back to you.
Leave me your mail. And
Okay,
yes,
I will do that.
All right behind. Yes, sir.
Hello, I have not read the Prague Cemetery yet, but I'm just wondering if you invented any new stylistic innovations in writing this. And if so, I wonder if it is inspired in some way by your work in the translation of Nerval.
The poet Nerval.
Yes, I understood the second part. I didn't understand
Was it
the first
inspired
one.
at all by your translation?
My question is...
No, I was inspired all of my life by Nerval. He's one of my idols. And in every of my novels, there is always a Nervalian quotation, even in that one, which is not an invented quotation, because Nerval was just dying after the cure of the Dr. Blanche, clinic, and my clinic of Dr. Dumouriez was he quotes Dr. Blanche, say, oh, Dr. Blanche was stupid. One of his patients committed suicide, a certain Nerval. So there is always some Nervalian hint. But I was inspired by Nerval, by the way of structuring the narration, the appeal to memory. You know, if there was no Nerval, Proust couldn't exist. And he knew it, and he said it. So Nerval is for me always, our friends don't know that I spend my life in reading and rereading Nerval and making university courses in Nerval. And at the end of my life, I decide finally to translate Nerval. I picked up this book that I have read hundreds of times, and I discovered a lot of new things.
How do you fit that in with the Elizabethan poets, though? I mean, how do you fit that in with the Elizabethan poets? It must get crowded in your reading, does it? If you're spending all the time with Nerval and the poets, and never mind. Never mind. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I would like to ask you about the Hypnerotomachia polyphily, because you have said that it was one of the most beautiful books ever printed, but in Regina Loana, your protagonist has a doctorate studying Hypnerotomachia. So I think that it must have a particular place in your heart. I'm wondering whether you could say something about it and whether you have any opinion, speaking of intellectual mysteries, on who might have written it.
That's why I want people to speak there, because I didn't understand.
Name of the book?
Oh,
no, she was speaking of Queen Loana, but because
Il sogno di Polifilo.
Sorry, say it again.
But
Il sogno di Polifilo.
yes, but you are asking the relationship of. No, recently it has been published a book on me by a certain Trainito, who found a lot of relationships between the Hypnerotomachia and and I don't remember which of my novels. There are accidental similarity. I am interested in Hypnerotomachia more from the antiquarian point of view as a collector, because I have one. But I never make a special studies on Hypnerotomachia. So, but you see, you found something, and this Trainito too finds them. You know, there are mysterious relationships between the books. I was charged with the imitation of certain authors I had never read. And on the contrary, I remember that one of my friends, after The Name of the Rose, said, but you should have read Dmitry Merezkovsky. Do you know him?
Sadly, no.
It was a decadent Russian mystic author of historical novels at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. And I said, gosh, at the age of 12, I read Merezkovsky. So you see, sometimes there are indirect influences.
Do you really have a library of 40,000 volumes? Is that true?
They should be allegedly 50,000. I don't keep the control of the story, because now I send a lot of books to the university for the students. I have a long table with an ad saying, take a book and run.
Take a book. There's two. I think we've got time for two more questions. Yes, sir.
That was my question about the personal collection of books. Can you speak a little bit about how you came to acquire your books, and how you manage it, and how you locate a book, in fact?
How you came to acquire the library in Milan, and in your apartment and your house?
The main library is in my apartment in Milano, but there are only 30,000 because there is no place for more. Then there are three other places in the world when I accumulate books. But, you know, that's accidental. I have so many books because especially Italian publishers are very generous in free copies. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought them.
Are you a fast reader? Do you read 1 or 2 books a week or 3? Or do you read?
It depends on the book. Well, you know that quick reading can be dangerous. Once Woody Allen said, I read with quick reading War and Peace, it speaks about Russia.
About Russia. One more question. Yes, sir.
Mr. Eco, you're a writer of famous erudition, but it seems to me, it's only an impression, I'm far from have read all of your works, but it seems to me that your work is fundamentally aesthetic, meaning that it fundamentally basically derives pleasure from the irony, as opposed to having a political impact. So it seems as perhaps a superficial impression that your work is fundamentally apolitical. Would you agree with that assessment?
It's fundamentally
Apolitical.
Would you agree with that assessment?
Not political.
No, you said before that my principal concern was aesthetic. Eh?
Yes.
But there is no connection and no opposition between aesthetic interest and apolitical. No, I don't think I am apolitical because when writing The Name of the Rose, even though speaking of the Middle Ages, I realized that I was telling something about the Italian terrorism at my time. I am not a organic intellectual writing politically because the Central Committee ordered me to do that. But I think this book has political intentions. If by political you mean partitical, well, okay, that's not my job. So obvious that I have aesthetic concern because to write a novel, like to write a poem, like to paint a painting means to want to reach an aesthetic effect, an aesthetic enjoyment. And sometimes it is forgot because people pay attention, as you said, erudition on one side, or the content. For instance, everybody is asking me about, for this book, about the Jews, the racism. Nobody asked me about the inner structure of the book, which on the architecture of the book. So sometimes I have curious reaction when people ask me, why you write difficult books and you have such a success? And I say, I feel offended, sir. If it is as I were Monica Bellucci and people asked me why all the men are crazy for you. Because I am beautiful.
Umberto Eco, thank you. Grazie mille.